So my name is Jeremy Levitt.
My name is Amanda Atabai.
My name is Benjamin Roisman.
And I'm Gabriel Dayan.
And you are now starting.
Does a snapshot fall under the takana of Cherem Rabbeinu Gershom? We will address both the snapshot generally and the snapshot in context with regard to this takana. Shut Minchat Shlomo Chelek Aleph Siman Zayin explains that Pikuach Nefesh overrules Shabbat, and not embarrassing others is more important than life. Therefore, we can see that one can transgress Shabbat in order to preserve someone else's dignity. Rav Shlomo Zalman states that based on the above, we also learn that halachic laws classified as deoraita may be transgressed, and in such case, laws of derabanan may be most certainly transgressed. In our case, this takana, which is considered derabanan, may be transgressed in order to preserve someone else's dignity, proving that snapshot does not fall under the takana. Tshuvot HaRashba, Volume 1, Siman 557, explains that Rabbeinu Gershom did not institute this cherem so that people may violate rabbinic halacha because of them. Therefore, in the case of an avera, this cherem can and must be transgressed. If educators objectively determine that in a certain situation they can only ensure compliance with their Torah by violating the privacy of an individual through reading their mail, their personal communications, or listening in on telephone conversations, there was no doubt that Rabbeinu Gershom would agree that it would be a mitzvah to do so. Max admitted to sending the snapshot to 4 people. Hodaat Bal Din Dameh Kemei Edin. An admission is the strongest proof and is considered better than 100 sources. An admission constitutes an implicit waiver of confidentiality because we know from Halachot Hashanah that once 3 people are aware of a certain situation, revealing it to a 4th person is not considered Lashon Hara. This is because the information is not considered private anymore. Chadrag was instituted to preserve confidentiality for the author, or the original sender, which in this case is Max. Since he waived his desire for confidentiality by revealing it to a 4th person, Chadrag cannot protect him anymore and cannot whatsoever be used as protection. Now, if we place this snapshot out of context, a snapshot still does not fall under the takana of Cherem Rabbeinu Gershom. According to Responsa Revavot Ephraim 3, section 4, page 112, we can halachically compare a snapshot to a postcard. How so? The fact is, Max knew that Jonathan was able to keep a copy of a snapshot, just like the sender of a postcard knows that anyone is able to publicly see his postcard. Therefore, since the sender knew that there was a possibility for other people to read his mail or snapshot, both a postcard and a snapshot do not fall under the takana of Cherem Rabbeinu Gershom. According to Shelot V'Tshuvot, Siman Tet Rachav, we can also learn that halachically compare a letter in a garbage to a snapshot due to the fact that the receiver of the letter puts it in a place where it is easily obtainable by anyone, which further proves the receiver's carelessness towards his message. In Max's case, he used a method of communication which is comparable to that of a letter in a garbage because of the accessibility of the snapshot, since one can easily obtain a copy of a snapshot or take a screenshot, just as if one can keep a letter found in a garbage. Thus, a snapshot should be and must be exempt from this takana.
Even if the snapshot does fall under the takana, was Jonathan permitted to share private information under these circumstances? Jonathan was in fact permitted to share private information under these specific circumstances, notably because there was a to'elet in him reporting Max's behavior, which we will be discussing further in our case. First of all, when you accept Snapchat's terms and conditions, you acknowledge to have read Snapchat's privacy policy, clearly stating that you agree that anyone you send the Snapchat to has permission to take a screenshot and therefore have permanent possession of your photo. In being aware of this, if Max wanted the Snapchat to be kept private, he needed to state so explicitly. Additionally, every Snapchat sent is kept in Snapchat's server, even if it is deleted off of the device it is received on. So if Max actually wanted to keep the picture with the insulting caption private, he should not have sent it via Snapchat. According to Rabbi Tzvi Shvets of Beit of Jerusalem in Ramat, Max is breaching his own privacy by using Snapchat and therefore cannot expect that others will go out of their way in order to preserve it. According to Rabbeinu Gershom, if Max wanted his message kept private, he should have written Bechadrag on it. Additionally, at no point in time did he explicitly request that his message be kept private in any other form, not even once he knew that Jonathan had a screenshot of his message. According to Quebec Law, Bill 56, Sections 1.1 and 18.2, Max's actions are illegal, and Jonathan's would be too if he were to not report the Snapchat. According to Rambam, Sefer Tisha, and Truth Mishnah Halachot, Jonathan was halachically obligated to report the Snapchat. We learn from the quote, "Ubiarta hara mikirbecha," that Jonathan's actions were justified. In Canada and the US, Jonathan was legally bound to report such actions due to the fact that he's current class president, and therefore legally considered to be a mandated reporter. Therefore, he can be pursued in a court of law for not acting accordingly. To conclude, according to Jewish law, as well as government law, Jonathan was not only permitted, but obligated to share this information.
Now, was it a violation of Lashon Hara? In no way were Jonathan's communications with Dr. Davis considered Lashon Hara in any time. On the contrary, such reporting has a to'elet, a benefit, according to Chofetz Chaim, which we will be discussing right now. According to Chofetz Chaim, Klal Yud Alacha Aleph, if someone witnesses a sin, harm, or even a wrongdoing inflicted on a fellow Jew, regardless of whether or not the victim is aware of it, and the witness is certain of what he or she has witnessed, the witness is permitted to report this to someone else. It is permissible in order to come as an aid to the victim by restoring his or her dignity, as well as by publicly denigrating the sinner's actions to ensure that others stay away from him and don't copy such behavior. However, in reporting such actions, one must adhere to the 7 rules listed in Chofetz Chaim, Klal Yud, Alacha Aleph, V'Gimel. According to Klal Yud, Alacha Gimel, if there is a to'elet by telling the story, then it is absolutely permissible to do so. This benefit can be to prevent others from committing the same evil, or to drive the sinner to repentance through the story being spread. Therefore, it is permissible for Jonathan to share such information. According to Klal Yud Alacha Hey Vav, if one witnesses someone speaking Lashon Hara about someone else, this is considered perpetration of harm, and all the laws of disparaging the perpetrator mentioned above apply. This not only applies if the victim knows that he or she was spoken of, but also if one sees that there will be a benefit from reporting such. According to Klal Yud Alacha Zayin V'Tet, one must not rebuke the perpetrator if he or she knows he will not listen or has sinned too often. In our case, Jonathan's email specifies that he does not know if Max will stop doing things like this, which implies that Max has committed sins like this in the past. Therefore, we're in a situation in which rebuking the perpetrator might not be beneficial, since Max has done this before. According to Chofetz Chaim, Klal Yud Alacha Tet, one must assist the Jew who was wronged and publicize the evil doings of the sinner. In our case, Jonathan has tried to right Max's wrong by reporting the act to Dr. Davis, the principal. According to Klal Ten Alacha Yud Gimel, one is permitted to tell someone with influence how one was wrong, in order for the influential person to rebuke the sinner or make him apologize for his sins. In our case, Dr. Davis is a person of influence who has the power to make Max apologize to Elizabeth for his actions. In addition, the source teaches us that this type of report is allowed by the Torah to be reported outside of a Beit Din. According to Chofetz Chaim, Klal Yud Alacha Bet, if someone speaks Lashon Hara to 3 listeners or more, and if one of them repeats this Lashon Hara to others, the repeater did not violate the prohibition. Based on the fact that there were 3 listeners, the 3 people to whom Max sent the Snapchat to, Jonathan's actions in repeating this Lashon Hara was completely acceptable. To conclude, Ilchot Lashon Hara is clearly in complete accordance with our stance on this case. No Lashon Hara was committed by Jonathan. Now, should he have shared the information in a different way? Jonathan addressed the situation in a correct manner, although he could have addressed the situation in a slightly different one. Here is how such incidents should be reported to the highest standard of Ilchot Lashon Hara. Jonathan could have performed the 6th element in a slightly better form, which explains that if one can bring about the benefit of somehow without speaking Lashon Hara about the wrongdoer, or reducing the amount of such to a minimum, one should try to do so. With this halakha in mind, Jonathan could have told Dr. Davis that the sinner was someone running for class president, refraining from sharing the sinner's name, and then Dr. Davis would question each candidate separately, giving Max the opportunity to admit to his sin and repent. If this fails, Max does not admit to his sin, Jonathan could have reported the name of the sinner, Max of course, without providing a copy of the Snapchat. since his report would have still been substantial. Again, we are leaving a chance for Max to admit to a sin. If all of this fails, only then should have Jonathan provided a copy of the Snapchat.
According to Jewish law, Dr. Davis did have complete right to suspend Max based on utilizing the information from Max's Snapchat. In fact, we can also see this from Sanhedrin Daf Samer Zayin Amud Aleph, that states that a Beit Din would assign witnesses to eavesdrop on the conversation of Martiyat Taribin, someone attempting to convince others to transgress in the mitzvot of the Torah. They would do this in order to find out who he is and to punish him. If a Beit Din assigns people to specifically reporting such a sin, then reporting a case of Lashon Hara to the equivalent of a member of a Beit Din of a school, the principle, is not a halachic issue. In Maaseh Rav, the alter rabbi of Slobodka transgressed this harem by not only reading Rabbi Kotler's mail, but by not giving it to him. He did this in order to prevent his student from committing an averah. According to Teshuvos HaRashba, Rabbeinu Gershom made his decrees to ensure compliance with the Torah as well as correct behavior on behalf of all Jews. If a Beit Din, parents, or educators objectively determine that the only way to do so would be by violating the privacy of an individual, there is no doubt that Rabbeinu Gershom would agree that it would be a mitzvah to do so. The most halachically appropriate way for Dr. Davis to respond to this issue would have been to, 1, address the manner in which Jonathan shared the information in order to make sure events like this don't happen again. She would explain what my partner explained before. And 2nd, to punish Max, but not Jonathan. Jonathan was trying to fulfill his duty as class president. By punishing him, there would be a message that is sent out loud and clear. You are telling students to not report harmful actions, and this will result in an environment where students do not feel safe. You cannot send out this message, and therefore Jonathan cannot be punished. Max, on the other hand, is very deserving of a punishment, where he committed Lashon Hara, and Dr. Davis has the responsibility to send out the message to her students that actions like these are unacceptable. As we explained before, based on our halachic sources, Dr. Davis did have the right to suspend Max, and therefore, this is exactly what she should do. We would like to conclude by saying that Jonathan is innocent and undeserving of any punishment. Our arguments and sources prove both halachically and legally that in the context of this case, the Snapchat does not fall under the takana of Terem de Rabbeinu Gershom. Jonathan was in fact permitted to share private information and did not commit Lashon Hara in doing so, and Dr. Davis has full halachic right to suspend Max utilizing the Snapchat.
Thank you.
I'm very sorry. I apologize. I have to leave for a funeral in just a moment. However, before I leave, I'd like to ask just one question, and that is, it says in Vayikra, Leviticus 19, Hocheach tochiach et amitecha, which means you shall surely rebuke your fellow. If you see your friend doing something wrong, try to help your friend get back on the right path. The group before you argued that Jonathan should have spoken to Max directly before speaking to the principal. How would you respond to that? Should Jonathan have spoken to Max directly?
So, according to Chofetz Chaim, what we learn in this case, according to your question, is that if we know that the sinner has done similar actions in the past, therefore rebuking him might not be the right way to confront him. Since he's done so in the past, presumably you had rebuked him in the past as well, and therefore doing so again might not be efficient. Therefore, Jonathan was in full right to go this time to Dr. Davis.
I have a follow-up question to that, and it's relating to Klal Yud, Halachot Zayin V'Tet. On page 9 of your book, you said that, and you just quoted it now, if the person is a perpetual sinner, then you shouldn't be tocheach them because it's going to be pointless. They're not going to stop sinning. But how do you know, in this case, that just because Max did this once, he previously was behaving in this way? And how do you know that not speaking to him isn't going to have any effect? You are presuming him to be guilty. Maybe this was the first time he ever did something.
In the case that we were given,
and I will add that I think a large part of your argument rests on this one point, that you were sure that rebuking him was going to be pointless.
in the case that we were given, it states that Max has done similar things in the past like this. Therefore, we did not believe that it was necessary for Jonathan to rebuke him, considering that he's done so in the past, and that has not worked, and because of that, he has repeated the sin once again. Now, with regard to our whole point based on this, it's not only the case, for a simple reason. Because not only did he not rebuke him, but when Max received a notification via Snapchat that the Snapchat was kept by Jonathan, Max didn't even ask, what are you going to do with it? Or please don't share it to anyone. Or don't show it to anyone. Don't send it to anyone. Therefore, that shows his carelessness of the fact that it might be shared. So to say that one should not rebuke him is justified by the second point, that he didn't even care that Jonathan was going to Snapchat it. The whole point of Snapchatting in this case was to go and rebuke. It wasn't to keep it as a souvenir. It was to rebuke. So Max could have imagined that.
I'd like to correct the judges. When the gentleman spoke, he said it may, he didn't say it is useless to rebuke, and that there may be. He used the word may, and I want to defend him. And the second, I quickly looked through the sources. I don't believe that I've seen Hocheach Tocheach as one of the sources here. So I'd like to defend the speakers. Thank you, gentlemen.